The equatorial zone. From January to March, our viewpoint for the night sky. Mid-evening, and we're looking toward the northern horizon, at first glance a rather barren region. Camelopardalis the giraffe is much lower than from the northern hemisphere, so too the stars of Lynx. To the east, and the constellation of Ursa Major, the Great Bear, including the Plough or Big Dipper. The North Star, Polaris, is now close to the horizon. From south of the equator, Polaris disappears altogether. Higher to a busier sky, and the stars of Leo the Lion, a pattern of the zodiac. Westward to Cancer the Crab, another zodiacal constellation. And also in the zodiac, the much bolder patterns of Gemini the Twins, and farther to the west, Taurus the Bull. Lower, via the shared star Alnath, lies Auriga the Charioteer with its bright star Capella, and finally, even lower, the stars of Perseus, the hero. The northern sky from the equatorial zone. With the Milky Way arching up to overhead, the southern sky from the equatorial zone. The sea serpent Hydra is just east of overhead, and tracking west with bright Procyon immediately above, the pattern of Monoceros the unicorn, and the handsome figure of Orion the hunter. At Orion's feet, Lepus the hare, and slightly to the east, brilliant Sirius in Canis Major, the big dog. Beneath is magnificent Puppis, the poop deck, and to the east on the other side of the Milky Way, tiny Pyxis, the compass. West of Puppis lies Columba, the constellation of the dove. And heading southwest, one of the least conspicuous patterns, the two stars of Calum the chisel. To the south of Puppis, Carina the keel, with its famous star Canopus, the second brightest in the sky. Then northeast a little, to Vela the sails. Before they were split, Vela, Carina and Puppis were the great ship Argo Navis, the biggest constellation of all. Next, to the best-known southern constellation, a pattern that's guided sailors for centuries, Crux Australis, the Southern Cross, and close by, the stars of Centaurus, the centaur, half man, half beast. For a signpost to the last constellation of the southern sky, we make for Orion and the bright star at the hunter's left foot, Rigel. Rigel is near the source of the celestial river Eridanus, an undistinguished pattern that meanders from near overhead right across the western sky. It ends close to the horizon with its only bright star, Achernar. Our tour of the equatorial skies. The equatorial zone. From April to June, our viewpoint for the night sky. It's mid-evening and we're looking north. The Plough, or Big Dipper, is now close to the horizon. So too the parent pattern of Ursa Major, the Great Bear. From an arc of 3 stars in the bear's tail, a curve to Arcturus, one of our closer bright stars. Arcturus, just 37 light-years away, is the jewel in the constellation of Boötes, the herdsman. Next in these tropical skies, another pointer from Ursa Major. 2 stars in the Big Dipper, the Plough, aim at Regulus. Regulus, a multiple star and also known as Alpha Leonis, is the eye-catcher in Leo, the constellation of the Lion. A wider vista to search for Gemini, the twins. From the mid-latitudes of the northern hemisphere, the whole constellation is visible. Here, just the heads of the twins, Castor and Pollux, peep from the northwestern horizon. Like farther north, the skies from the equator at this season have little of the Milky Way. Closest bright star to the hazy band of our galaxy is Vega, in the tiny constellation of Lyra, well to the northeast. Upward from Lyra, the heroic pattern of Hercules, the half-mortal, who became a god after performing his 12 labours. With the Milky Way visible only at the northeast horizon, our final northward panorama from the tropics. This is the view to the south from the equatorial zone. To the east, upper left, the stellar supergiant Antares in the constellation of Scorpius, the Scorpion. To the right and directly south, Centaurus, the Centaur. Its two brighter stars, Rigel Centaurus and Hadar, are the southern pointers. Beneath Centaurus, Crux, the famous Southern Cross, so beloved of sailors. It has a bright double star, A Crux. To the east of Centaurus, the tiny V-shape of Norma, the carpenter's set square. Close to Norma, two treasures. The first is Shapley 1, a planetary nebula surrounding a white dwarf, but visible only in big telescopes. The second is Menzel 3, a distorted patch in a moderate telescope, but well named the Ant Nebula through the Hubble Space Telescope. These are the death throes of a star like our Sun. To some larger patterns of the southern sky. Overhead is Spica, brightest member of Virgo, the constellation of the Virgin. And just beneath, the rough square of Corvus, the Crow, while from the west, with its star Alphard, comes the tail of Hydra, the sea serpent. Southwest now to three patterns that once formed the great ship Argo Navis. The first is Vela, appropriately named the constellation of the sails. To the right is Puppis, the poop deck, at this season disappearing beneath the southwestern horizon. And to the east, Carina the keel, third part of the old ship. Above them all, Antlia, the air pump, named after the invention of the Frenchman, Denis Papin. Within Antlia lies NGC 2997, a spiral with a small nucleus and sprawling arms. This faint but impressive galaxy is visible in a moderate telescope. The southern sky, seen now with the Milky Way. As we track toward the red star Antares in Scorpius, it's the starting point for a sweep along the hazy band of our galaxy. Through binoculars or a small telescope, the Milky Way offers some of the most delectable views in the equatorial skies. The mid-latitudes of the southern hemisphere, where daylight is shortened, The mid-latitudes of the southern hemisphere, where daylight is shortening and the nights are longer. From April to June, our viewpoint for the constellations. With the Milky Way far to the right, our mid-evening view is clear. Unimpeded by the haze of our galaxy, we see beyond, deep into the northern sky. To the west, the bright star Regulus dominates the pattern of Leo, a member of the zodiac. As such, this constellation of the Lion is often a backdrop to the Sun and its orbiting planets. A wider view reveals the Plough or Big Dipper digging a furrow on the horizon. A curve from 3 stars in the handle leads to the star Arcturus. Arcturus is the 4th brightest star of the night sky. It's also the brightest in Boötes, the constellation of the herdsman, and neighbouring Corona Borealis, the northern crown. Unlike most stars, the colour of Arcturus is perceptible to the naked eye as an orange hue. Onward from Arcturus, the curve from the Plough or Big Dipper targets Spica, a brilliant white star. Spica, with a surface temperature of 25,000 degrees and 260 light-years from Earth, is in Virgo. In this constellation of the Virgin, Spica is the ear of wheat in her hand. Westward for a pointer from the inverted question mark that forms the sickle of Leo. 2 stars signpost the orange giant, Alphard. Alphard, the only bright star in the constellation of Hydra, the sea serpent, is well named the solitary one. Beneath Hydra, Corvus, the tiny constellation of the Crow. Within, and visible in a moderate telescope, the antennae galaxies NGC 4038 and 4039. They're the result of a titanic interaction, here in animation. The galaxies don't collide, but pass through each other, scattering stars into the shape of an insect's antennae. From the Hubble Space Telescope, images of the heart of the galaxies. They show a firestorm of starbirth, unleashed by the interaction. East of Corvus, Hydra and Virgo, to a member of the zodiac, the faint stars of Libra, through which the Sun passes in early November. Libra is the constellation of the scales, the balance supposedly held aloft by the goddess of justice. To the right, the broad pattern of Ophiuchus, the serpent-bearer. In mythology, Ophiuchus struggles with a snake, its head upside down to the west, serpens caput, its tail to the east, serpens cauda. Despite the drama, an unremarkable region. Finally, toward the horizon, to the fifth largest pattern in the heavens, the constellation of Hercules. Again, its stars are dim. Indeed, the northeastern sky at this season is rather barren. From the mid-latitudes of the southern hemisphere, our bearings south. Upper left, within the Milky Way, Crux Australis, the Southern Cross, and just beneath Carina, the constellation of the Keel, with its bright star Canopus. Above, Vela the sails, and to the southwest, the pattern of Puppis, the poop deck, third component of the mythical ship Argo Navis. In the richness of Carina, and easy in binoculars, lies IC 2602, the open cluster of Theta Carinae, also known as the Southern Pleiades or Pleiades. Still in Carina, and just a colourless patch in moderate telescopes, NGC 3576. But apply a big telescope to this nebula of starbirth, and clever photography unlocks these real colours. The same goes for IC 2220, the Toby Jug Nebula, like a beer mug. It's a reflection nebula, lit by a bright red giant at the centre. In this abundant region of the Milky Way, Carina has more treasures. This, NGC 3293, an open cluster with a red giant set among hotter stars. And here, the Carina Nebula, NGC 3372, the most exquisite in the Milky Way and visible to the naked eye. Within, the Keyhole Nebula and brilliant Eta Carinae, good in binoculars, but through the Hubble Space Telescope, a superstar in tumult, a supernova about to happen. From Carina upward to Crux, the Southern Cross, with its two brightest stars, A Crux and Mimosa. Together with two neighbouring stars, here's the Southern Cross progressively defocused in a long exposure. It reveals the star's colours, which elude the naked eye. Close to Mimosa, or Beta Crucis, the open cluster of the Jewel Box, NGC 4755. And here's the Milky Way enveloping the stars of Crux. To the lower left, the coal sack, not a hole in space, but a dark nebula. East of Crux, the signpost to the Southern Cross, the pointers, Rigel, Cantorus and Hadar. They're part of Centaurus, the spectacular constellation of the Centaur. Rigel Cantorus is our target, properly known as Alpha Centauri. A single star by naked eye, Alpha Centauri is, in fact, twins and a red dwarf, at 4 1/4 light-years, our closest stellar neighbours. Next in Centaurus, to the rear hoof, and the Lambda Centauri cluster, IC 2944. The stars are visible in a small telescope, but not the dark globules or the pink nebulosity. Again, toward the rear leg of Centaurus, NGC 3918, the blue planetary nebula, a bluish patch through a moderate telescope, but like this in the Hubble Space Telescope. Behind the shoulders of Centaurus, and easy with the naked eye, to the biggest and best globular cluster. It's Omega Centauri, 1 million stars, just 17,000 light-years from Earth. Nearby in Centaurus, and good with binoculars, the remarkable galaxy Centaurus A. Radio telescopes detect powerful emissions jetting from the galactic core, evidence maybe of a black hole. Close up, this dark lane could be the remains of a smaller galaxy that ploughed into Centaurus A and triggered a flurry of starbirth. The catalogue number, NGC 5128. Next door is the galaxy NGC 4945. Like Centaurus A, it's relatively close to us, but as an edge-on spiral, easily missed in a small telescope. Finally in Centaurus, and upward in the sky, to NGC 4622, the backward spiral galaxy, so called because it rotates in the same direction as its outer arm's trail. The cause may have been a collision. Just a blur in a moderate telescope, this image is from Hubble. Within the Milky Way and south of Centaurus, at the foot of Crux, the Southern Cross, lies NGC 5189, an intriguing feature of Musca, the tiny constellation of the Fly. The object is the spiral planetary nebula, the dying gasps of a star like our Sun. Why the expulsions are so chaotic puzzles astronomers. From Musca, south again to the Chameleon, a pattern as inconspicuous as its name suggests. But a large telescope reveals the Chameleon 1 complex, bright nebulae and hot stars close to the celestial South Pole. Northeast from the Chameleon, 3 main stars form Triangulum Australe, the Southern Triangle. By naked eye, an easily recognized pattern, although outshone by Alpha Centauri above. Between the two, the constellation of Cercinus, the drawing compass. The location of a Seyfert, a galaxy expelling gas at high speed and pictured here by the Hubble Space Telescope. Seyferts are thought to contain massive black holes. The Seyfert in Cercinus may be invisible to all but the most powerful instrument, but the glories of the southern skies are there for all. Swept through binoculars or a low-power telescope, the Milky Way is scattered with star clusters and bright nebulae. From April to June, a graphic guide to the heavens. The mid-latitudes of the southern hemisphere, where it's late summer and the nights are relatively short. From January to March, our viewpoint for the constellations. It's mid-evening and we're looking north. Dominating the northern sky, the stars of Orion. Inverted to visitors from the north, this is Orion correctly configured for observers in the south. If mythology has it wrong, with the hunter on his head, it's because the Greeks never dreamt of these southern skies. At the right of Orion's belt, to Alnitak, or Zeta Orionis, seen here lower frame with the famous Horsehead Nebula, a great dust cloud in silhouette. The Horsehead is detected only in the biggest telescope, but here, in Orion's sword, a nebula visible to the naked eye, albeit as a misty patch. But through the most powerful telescope, a glorious nebula in Orion. To the west of Orion, Eridanus, the river, flowing far out of view, and above Orion, the stars of Lepus the Hare. They help point us to IC 418, 2,000 light-years from Earth, the Spirograph Nebula. Spirograph is the fate of our Sun after it bloats to a red giant and sheds a nebula. Orion, our unfailing signpost. From his belt, a line extends towards the star Aldebaran, the lusty eye of Taurus the bull. The story goes that the god Zeus, disguised as a majestic bull, fell in love with beautiful Europa. As she climbed on his back, he carried her off for his own, swimming from Phoenicia to Crete. Only the forequarters of Taurus are visible as he emerges from the sea. In the V-shape that forms his face, an open star cluster called the Hyades or Hyades. It's visible to the naked eye, as are the Pleiades or Pleiades just beneath. They're the most famous open cluster of all, commonly known as the Seven Sisters. Orion again, and a pointer through Bellatrix carries us to the bright star Capella. Capella is the jewel in Auriga, the charioteer, an easily seen pattern sharing a star with Taurus. A line now from Orion's belt through Betelgeuse to Castor. Castor is a sextuplet, but appears only as a double star through a small telescope. In the pattern of Gemini the twins, Pollux is the brightest point. Castor is the white star immediately below its orange partner. In mythology, the god Zeus cast the twins into the sky so they would never be separated. A wider vista for a signpost. From Bellatrix in Orion through Betelgeuse we reach Procyon in Canis Minor, the little dog. Procyon is clear to the naked eye, but its fellow in the two-star constellation is a little fainter, the star Beta Canis Minoris. Higher in the sky to the obscure constellation of Monoceros, the unicorn. Within the Crook, at its base, lies the star cluster at the heart of the Rosette Nebula. On the clearest nights, it's discernible in small telescopes. Close by in Monoceros to Trumpler 5, an ancient star cluster. Devoid of bright, short-lived youngsters, these dim stars simmer on the back burner. Nearby is Hubble's Variable Nebula. It changes appearance, due probably to passing dust clouds. Moving eastward from vivid Gemini and obscure Monoceros, we encounter another indistinct pattern, the stars of Cancer, best found with binoculars. Like Gemini, Cancer is in the zodiac, one of the few claims to fame for this constellation of the Crab. From Castor and Pollux in Gemini, the line to a small group of stars that form the head of Hydra, the sea serpent, just visible with the naked eye. Onward to the star Alphard, the solitary one, so called because of the lack of bright objects nearby or within the entire straggle of Hydra. A wider aspect, to seek direction from Orion. By extending a line upward from the belt, we reach Sirius, brightest of all stars. Sirius is the dog star, animated here with its pup. Just 8.7 light-years from Earth, Sirius is the beacon of Canis Major, the big dog. And there's another attraction. It's as wide as the moon. M41, a cluster of 80 stars, clear by naked eye. From Canis Major we move up to the stars of Puppis, the poop deck, and home in on a patch of light easily seen in binoculars, M46, a cluster of more than 100 stars, plus, lower right, a planetary nebula. Our last panorama north from the southern hemisphere. From the mid-latitudes of the southern hemisphere, the view to the south has a nautical touch. First, Puppis, the constellation of the poop deck. Then Vela, the constellation of the sails. And thirdly, down below, Carina, the constellation of the keel. At its western tip, the second brightest star in the heavens, Canopus. As we close with Puppis, our sights are set for a faint but fascinating globule, simply known as CG4. Several light-years across, It's a dust cloud being destroyed by radiation jetting from energetic stars, a cosmic jellyfish in retreat. To 4 stars, sometimes mistaken for the Southern Cross. The shape is right, but the false cross is larger, more symmetrical, and less bright than Crux Australis, the real Southern Cross. As it hoves into view, compare the Southern Cross, the stars of Crux, that adorn the flags of several nations. Next to a fabulous supernova remnant spread across the borders of Puppis and Vela. Spanning 40 degrees of the sky, the Vela supernova remnant is the entrails of one or more ancient explosions. But so diffuse is this stellar debris, only large telescopes can see it. Eastward now to NGC 3132, the 8-burst or Southern Ring planetary nebula, good in small telescopes. Back with the 3 constellations of the ship, we close on Carina and then head southeast for the most exquisite nebula in the Milky Way, NGC 3372. Abounding in young stars, some the brightest and most massive in the galaxy, this is the Carina Nebula, and it's visible to the naked eye. At the western tip of Carina, brilliant Canopus needs no telescope. To the south and rather outshone is Pictor, the faint constellation of the painter's easel. At its western tip, Beta Pictoris is easy by naked eye. But when the star is masked out, this is what appears, a dusty disk. Here in animation, the disk seems to be warped. The culprit could be a planet orbiting the star. The clue is from the Hubble Space Telescope. To the northwest of Pictor, and visible in binoculars, lurks the red dwarf, Capitan's star. It is so close, just 12.8 light-years, that its swift progress through the cosmos can be detected. South of Pictor, Dorado, the stars of the goldfish, and at their southeastern tip, the bright patch of the large Magellanic Cloud. This time-lapse of stars circling the southern celestial pole has the large Magellanic Cloud upper right, with a small Magellanic Cloud beneath. They're satellite galaxies of the Milky Way. The large cloud links Dorado with Mensa, the constellation of the Table. To the northeast is Volans, the pattern of the flying fish. And in the western sky, Eridanus the river runs out at Achernar. Brilliant Achernar is a pointer to the elusive pole of the southern skies. Imagine a line strung from Achernar to the Southern Cross. The starless midpoint is the pole. And just below, the pattern of Octans, our final constellation. From January to March, a graphic guide to the heavens. The equatorial zone, from October to December, our viewpoint for the night sky. It's mid-evening, and we're looking north. Bright stars abound. There's Deneb in Cygnus the swan, and sweeping east the stars of Lacerta the lizard. Cepheus the king is below, with his queen Cassiopeia in the Milky Way. Next, Camelopardalis, the giraffe. Then Auriga, the charioteer, sporting brilliant Capella. The stars Castor and Pollux are the twins in Gemini. At this season, the Milky Way swings low. Above the Milky Way, the northwestern sky is dominated by the stars of Pegasus, the winged horse, with its distinctive square. Sharing a star with Pegasus, Andromeda, daughter of Cepheus and Cassiopeia. Overhead, Pisces, the constellation of the fishes. To the right, Aries the ram. And just below, Triangulum, the tiny triangle. This is a wonderful time for observers. The sky is bedecked with brilliant stars. One of the most glittering constellations straddles the Milky Way. With the bright stars Murphak and Algol, it's Perseus, the hero. Southeast is Taurus, with Aldebaran marking the eye of the bull, while upper right, Orion has the stars Rigel and Betelgeuse. From the tropics, the constellations to the north. The view south from the equatorial zone is virtually clear of the Milky Way. Far to the east, Sirius, brightest of all stars, marks Canis Major, the big dog. The bright star Canopus is to the west. Canis Major just nuzzles the Milky Way, as do the stars above. With Rigel and Betelgeuse the brightest, this is Orion, the hunter. Rigel is close to the source of the meandering constellation of Eridanus, the river. Running all the way to Achernar, its brightest star, most of Eridanus is rather faint. From the sixth largest constellation to 5 much smaller. The first is Columba, the pattern of the dove. To the right, the 2 stars of Calum, the chisel, and farther right, Horologium, the constellation of the clock. Beneath is Dorado, the goldfish. And next door, Reticulum, the reticle, an old instrument for measuring star positions. Leaving the large and small Magellanic clouds just above the horizon, we move toward the southwestern sector of the sky. At the top, the bright star Fomalhaut marks Piscis austrinus, the southern fish. Lower left, the triangle of Hydrus, the little water snake, and above, with Achernar between, Phoenix, the mythical bird. Below, 2 more birds, Tucana, the pattern of the toucan, and Grus, the crane. To the southwest, the pattern of Indus, named in honor of native North Americans. To complete this southern panorama, we identify 4 constellations in the upper southwestern sky. The first bears little relation to its name, Fornax, the barren pattern of the furnace. Upper left, Cetus, the whale or sea monster, is a more convincing depiction. But Sculptor, the sculptor's studio, is as abstruse as its stars. To the right, however, Aquarius, the water-bearer, has been a recognizable figure since Babylonian times. Our tour of the equatorial skies. The mid-latitudes of the southern hemisphere, where it's late winter and the nights are long and cool. From July to September, our viewpoint for the constellations. As we look north in the mid-evening, 3 bright stars command the lower stretch of the Milky Way: Deneb, Vega, and Altair, points of the winter triangle. A configuration rather than a constellation, the triangle is an invaluable guide for the observer. To the west, immediately left of Vega, the faint stars of Hercules, best recognized by the square-like keystone at the center. Unusually for the southern hemisphere, Hercules is the right way up. He holds the multi-heads of Hydra, slain in one of his 12 heroic feats. A wider vista for another faint pattern. Above Hercules, Ophiuchus, the serpent-bearer. Supposedly, Ophiuchus is struggling with a snake. The inverted head, serpent's caput, to the left, the tail, serpent's cauda, here on the right. But our target is in Ophiuchus, the planetary nebula NGC 6369, the Little Ghost. Clear in a moderate telescope, this star is dying. Nearby is M19, a distant globular cluster, but visible in binoculars. Flagged by Vega, Lyra is lower in the Milky Way. To the east, Cygnus the Swan, marked by Deneb. Of the 3 stars in the triangle, Deneb is the faintest. it's much farther away. Right from Deneb, in a wing of the Swan, the Cygnus Loop or Veil Nebula. Visible in binoculars, it's the entrails of a star that went supernova 15,000 years ago. From Cygnus, upward to Altair, beacon of Aquila the Eagle. As third point of the triangle, Altair shines bright, but the nearby planetary nebula NGC 6751 is seen only in the biggest telescope, the Celestial Eye. Northwest of Aquila is Scutum the Shield. Here, just right of centre, is M11, the Wild Duck Open Cluster. Good in binoculars, it's an array of some 200 stars. Lower down in the Milky Way, between Aquila and Cygnus, three neat little patterns. To the right, Delphinus the dolphin. To the left, Vulpecula the fox. And in the centre, Sagitta the arrow. With the Milky Way evenly dividing the northern sky, we begin our trek through the northeastern quadrant. From Altair and two neighbouring stars in Aquila, a line extends to the brightest stars of Capricornus. Capricornus is a constellation of the zodiac through which pass the Sun, the Moon and the planets. As the pattern of the sea-goat, legend has it that the god Pan, fleeing a monster, leapt into a river. His head became the goat, his rear a fish. Just above the fishy tail, the globular cluster M30. Visible in small telescopes, M30 has a dense, collapsed core. During the long nights of winter and the relatively pollution-free atmosphere of the southern hemisphere, what better season to sweep the glories of the Milky Way through a good pair of binoculars? After all, the show is free. Finally, looking north from the south, two constellations. Pegasus, the winged horse, dull but easy to spot with its central box, and Aquarius, the water-bearer. From the mid-latitudes of the southern hemisphere, the view south is centred on the Milky Way. With Antares, its brightest star, this is Scorpius, a constellation of the zodiac. To keep them apart, the creature who supposedly killed Orion, Scorpius the Scorpion, is placed at the other side of the sky, to its victim, the hunter. Set mainly in the Milky Way, Scorpius offers rich pickings. Here, the resplendent stars of the tail. But toward the head, Antares steals the show, a supergiant shedding a cloud of particles into space. Next door, on the right, the globular cluster M4, and upper left, the star Sigma Scorpii, a magnificent region and visible in binoculars. Above the tail of Scorpius, a couple of open clusters. M6 is well named the butterfly cluster, when viewed in binoculars. M7 is brighter and visible by naked eye. Next in Scorpius, to a small globular cluster. M80 needs a moderate telescope to resolve its stars, and there are several 100,000, held together by gravity. Close to a claw of Scorpius is the strongest X-ray source in the sky. The cause? Scorpius X1, a neutron star stripping material from its companion. Northeast of Scorpius, Sagittarius, another pattern of the zodiac. Lying in the direction of our galactic centre, Sagittarius abounds in starfields and nebulae. In this constellation of the Archer, half man, half beast, we take aim for M17, an emission nebula known variously as the Omega, Swan, Horseshoe, Checkmark, or Lobster. Clear in binoculars, in the wider view M17 is set in a sea of stars. As we travel down the Milky Way, a purple blur lower right. In close-up, it's M20, the Trifid Nebula, crossed by dark dust lanes and visible in binoculars. Sagittarius has one of the finest globular clusters, M22, and as one of the closest, it's bright enough to spot by naked eye. Through binoculars, it's wonderful. So too is any sweep of the Milky Way, this one leading to M8. In close-up, M8 is the Lagoon Nebula, a vast gaseous cloud, clear by naked eye. Still in Sagittarius, to NGC 6522, a small, faint globular cluster, visible only in large telescopes. It's the midpoint of a window, amid dense star fields, through which astronomers try to glimpse the galactic centre, 30,000 light-years away. In this star-packed region, not the window, but a dark cloud called Barnard 86, and above it, the open cluster, NGC 6520. Finally, the holy grail of Sagittarius is obscured by dust clouds and brilliant star fields. In infrared, this is as close to the galactic centre as we can see, the supermassive Pistil star. From Sagittarius, we leave the splendours of the Milky Way for some quieter constellations. The star Fomalhaut flags the pattern of Piscis austrinus, the southern fish. On the right, the simple shape of Microscopium, the microscope. And below, Indus, like a boy with a football. Westward, toward the tail of Scorpius. And appropriately, to really enjoy the dim stars of Telescopium, a telescope is required. Just above, the same applies to Corona Australis, the southern crown. But it hides a twin jewel, the reflection nebulae, NGC 67, 26 and 27. They're lit by young stars. Southward is the constellation of Ara, to the Greeks and Romans, a sacrificial altar. Ara is in the Milky Way and rich in vistas. This one, NGC 6188, an emission nebula. Also visible in binoculars, Ara boasts the globular cluster NGC 6397. And the Stingray, the youngest known planetary nebula, a Hubble image. Still in the Milky Way, but much closer to the horizon, we target the Southern Cross, Crux Australis, and enveloping it, Centaurus the Centaur, with its bright star Rigel Kentaurus. Almost touching, to the north, Lupus, the stars of the Wolf. And to the east, Triangulum Australi, the easy shape of the Southern Triangle. Just below Rigel Kentaurus, the star Hadar directs us through the Southern Triangle to the Peacock star. As the football of Indus, the Peacock star is in fact the brightest point in Parvo, the constellation of the Peacock. North in the pattern is a spiral galaxy like our own, NGC 6744, best in moderate telescopes. Lower in Parvo and needing a good telescope, two interacting galaxies, the larger, NGC 6872, the other, IC 4970. The foreground star is unconnected. In these southern skies of winter, a final constellation. Near the bright star Achernar lies Tucana, the pattern of the toucan. The star and the bird are markers for a faint blue patch, a satellite galaxy of the Milky Way, the small Magellanic Cloud. It's visible by naked eye on a clear night, with the globular cluster 47 Tucani on the left. From July to September, a graphic guide to the heavens. The mid-latitudes of the southern hemisphere, where nights are warming and shortening. From October to December, our viewpoint for the night sky. It's mid-evening and we're looking north. The Milky Way is a misty band on the horizon. Immediately above, with its great square, is Pegasus, the winged horse. Alpheratz is the star lost to neighbouring Andromeda, the beautiful princess. Low in Andromeda, and equally beautiful, M31, the Andromeda Galaxy. Visible by naked eye and the largest in our local group, Andromeda resembles the Milky Way. Above Pegasus and Andromeda lies Pisces, the Fishers, a constellation of the zodiac. Here in the southern hemisphere, Pisces is the site of the autumn equinox, where the sun crosses the celestial equator from south to north. 2,000 years ago, it happened in Aries, but Earth's slight wobble has shifted the transition. Beneath Aries, Triangulum, the triangle. And lower still, Perseus, the hero who saved Andromeda. Above is Aldebaran, brightest star of Taurus the Bull, with the Pleiades, or Pleiades, to the left, the most famous open star cluster in the sky. 2 stars in the square of Pegasus signpost Fomalhaut. Just 22 light-years away, Fomalhaut is twice the size of the Sun and 13 times as luminous. As the beacon of Piscis austrinus, the southern fish, Fomalhaut is well named the fish's mouth. For in the disk that surrounds the star, a mouth could be opening, where material clumps into planets. Down from Piscis austrinus is Aquarius, the water-bearer, a constellation of the zodiac. Right from Piscis austrinus, the dim pattern of Sculptor, supposedly a sculptor's workshop. Although its stars are of little interest, Sculptor has 2 fine examples of edge-on galaxies, astronomically fairly rare phenomena. The first is NGC 55. Good in binoculars, a big telescope can resolve individual stars. Another galaxy, oblique rather than edge-on, is the Cartwheel. It looks this way because an intruder careened through, creating a great ripple of stars. The culprit, possibly a small galaxy to the right. The Cartwheel needs a large telescope. Unlike Sculptor's second edge-on spiral, NGC 253, at about 10 million light-years, it's fine in binoculars. Still looking north from the southern hemisphere, we close on a faint set of stars that include Deneb Katos and Myra. This is Cetus, the constellation of the Whale. Upward and right is Fornax, the furnace. Despite its name, nothing glows in Fornax, but powerful telescopes reveal galaxies. This one, NGC 1316, is a cannibal devouring other galaxies. It's a member of the Fornax cluster, a compact group 60 to 65 million light-years distant. Many are elliptical galaxies, but not this one, NGC 1365, a classic barred spiral, some 200,000 light-years across. Lastly, in the northern sky, a couple of important constellations. The first is the Hunter, Orion, with its bright stellar markers, Rigel and Betelgeuse. The second is often overlooked because of its faintness and length, Eridanus, the river. At this season, it runs from way overhead to near Orion's star Rigel. In a loop of the river is the galaxy NGC 1300, a barred spiral, but visible only in larger telescopes. Nearby, the same goes for NGC 1232, twice as wide as the Milky Way. The northern sky. This is the panorama south from the mid-latitudes of the southern hemisphere. To the east, the sky is dominated by the stars Canopus and Sirius. As the brightest star of all, Sirius marks Canis Major, the big dog. Likewise, Carina, the ship's keel, is flagged by Canopus. In between is Puppis, poop deck of the legendary ship Argo Navis. Below are its sails, Vela. Supposedly, Jason sailed Argo Navis in search of the Golden Fleece. Before it was divided, Argo Navis was the biggest constellation. High in the heavens, two bright stars, Rigel and Achenar, mark either end of Eridanus, the celestial river. Part of it meanders overhead into the northern sky. Beneath is Columba, in mythology the dove released by Jason and the Argonauts. To the right, Calum, the two stars of the chisel. And still farther right, Horologium, faint and obscure, the constellation of the clock. It honours the pioneering of the pendulum clock by the Dutch astronomer Christian Huygens. Horologium has at least two treasures: the globular cluster NGC 1261, whose stars can be resolved in a moderate telescope, and at the eastern end of the pattern, the galaxy NGC 1512, a magnificent barred spiral. Discernible in binoculars, this image is from Hubble. West from Horologium, high in the sky, is the stellar beacon of Fomalhaut. Between Fomalhaut and Achenar is Phoenix, the mythical bird, but more like a moored riverboat. In this sector of the southern sky, stargazing is like birdwatching. With Phoenix at the top, the water bird Grus is nearby, the pattern of the crane. Below, toward the horizon, is Pavo the peacock. And completing the flock, Tucana, the constellation of the toucan. Upper right, Fomalhaut marks Piscis austrinus, the southern fish, while below, honouring native North Americans, is Indus. This is the region of the Magellanic Clouds, two misty patches that are satellite galaxies of our Milky Way. With the large Magellanic Cloud on the left, we head for its lesser companion. On a good night, the small cloud is visible by naked eye, but there's no missing the object on the right. Unconnected with the cloud, this is the globular cluster 47 Tucani, second largest and second brightest of its kind. At this season, the Magellanic Clouds make excellent observing. They're either side of Hydrus, the triangle of the little water snake. Above the large cloud is Reticulum, the reticle, a device for measuring star positions. A wider view shows the goldfish, Dorado, with its tail flicking the large cloud. Toward the head, NGC 1566, a Seyfert galaxy. The brilliant nucleus is like a quasar, but less energetic. Mensa, the table, is a bookend with Dorado, as they unfold the large Magellanic Cloud and its 10 billion stars. Through binoculars and small telescopes, the LMC reveals clusters and individual stars. Pink nebulae of hydrogen gas are regions of stellar birth. The biggest is the Tarantula Nebula. Lower right, some massive stars destined to go supernova. And here, the largest, hottest and most massive stars ever seen. In 1987, a supergiant exploded in the LMC. For weeks it could be seen by naked eye. These are its shock waves, the first ever photographed. Years later, this is the remnant of that cosmic flash. The LMC, our companion galaxy, is quite a showcase. This graphic guide to the heavens is complete. The equatorial zone. From July to September, our viewpoint for the night sky. It's mid-evening, and we're looking north. 3 prominent stars catch the eye: Deneb, Vega, and Altair, corners of a triangle. Not a constellation, but a seasonal signpost as we navigate the heavens. We set course west from the triangle, to the left of the Milky Way, and brilliant Vega. Here are the faint stars of Hercules, the mythical hero. Above and equally dim, Ophiuchus, the serpent-bearer. The serpent is either side. Serpens cauda, the tail, serpens caput, the inverted head. Downward to the northwest, the bright star at the left is Arcturus, our marker for Boötes, the constellation of the herdsman. Heading east, the Milky Way sweeps upward to the triangle. Beneath Vega is Draco, the coiled pattern of the dragon. And to the east, partly in the Milky Way, Cepheus, the constellation of the king. Next door, within the Milky Way, his beautiful queen, Cassiopeia. High above, the constellations of the triangle, Aquila, Lyra, and Cygnus. And to the east, Pegasus, the winged horse. With the Milky Way arching to overhead, this is the view south from the equatorial zone. First, and splendid to sweep with small telescopes, Scorpius, the pattern of the scorpion. To the left, Sagittarius the archer, like Scorpius, a member of the zodiac. And farther east, a third zodiacal constellation, Capricornus, the sea-goat. A little lower, with Fomalhaut, its starry beacon, is Piscis Austrinus, the southern fish. And to the right, the stars of Microscopium, the microscope. The southern constellations, unseen by the ancients, have less mythology than northern skies. Here, for instance, Native Americans are honoured in the pattern of Indus, the Indian, lower left. There's the telescope, Telescopium, and just above, the semicircle of Corona Australis, the southern crown. And toward the horizon, Ara the altar, nestling in the Milky Way. Finally, looking south from the tropics, a flock of 4 exotic birds. Flying east of Indus is Grus, the constellation of the crane. Southwest of Indus, Pavo, the peacock. In the far east, Phoenix, the mythical bird that rose from its ashes. And lastly, Tucana, the constellation of the toucan. Our tour of the equatorial skies is complete.